The 20th Communist Party Congress has begun. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to secure an unprecedented third term. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the 20th edition, Xi spoke about a host of issues, from China's COVID-19 policy to Hong Kong. During his 1 hour and 49-minute speech in front of 2,300 delegates at the Beijing's Great Hall of the People, the Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that China has waged a comprehensive control over Hong Kong, further turning it from chaos to governance. Listen in.
面对香港局势动荡变化，我们依照宪法和基本法，有效实施对特别行政区的全面管制权，落实爱国者治港原则，香港局势实现由乱到治的重大转折。
Apart from this, the Chinese president, who is set to secure an unprecedented third term, made it clear that the communist regime would never commit to abandoning the use of force on Taipei.
面对台独势力分裂活动和外部势力干涉台湾事务的严重挑衅，我们坚决开展反分裂、反干涉 重大斗争，展示了我们维护国家主权和领土完整、反对台独的坚强决心和强大能力。
And for more on this, we're now being joined by Andrew K.P. Leong from Hong Kong, who is an international affairs expert. Welcome to the broadcast, Andrew.
Thank you.
Now, during his nearly 2-hour-long speech, the Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that he has waged a comprehensive control over Hong Kong, turning it from chaos to governance. But just last week, 5 teenagers were sentenced to 3 years in jail for urging an armed revolution. How do you assess these statements made by the Chinese president?
Of course, these 5 teenagers were only part of those arrested and charged for waging a kind of violent riots against the law and order in Hong Kong. So that was a sad period in Hong Kong's chapters, because during the almost a year and a half, Hong Kong was in logjam. The whole law and order was held to ransom as people threw petrol bombs around the police stations and also challenging the police and even threatening the relatives of police officers. Above all, the whole momentum was driven by a false premise of demanding universal suffrage, but in violation of the Hong Kong's basic constitution. And the irony was that Hong Kong's constitution was enacted by Beijing. It was Beijing's initiative to introduce universal suffrage, one man, one vote, in Hong Kong's mini constitution, and that was not included in the UK's sort of bilateral agreement on handing over Hong Kong. But then, on the other hand, the safeguard for universal suffrage for Beijing is that the candidates must be pre-screened. Now, of course, that's not democratic by Western standards, but Hong Kong is not a country. And then the leader in Hong Kong have to work with Beijing and accountable for Beijing. So that safeguard was challenged and thrown outside the window, and then leading into a street kind of violence. And so that was the background. And now with the enactment of the national security law, everything is now back to normal, and Hong Kong is now functioning pretty well. And there's and even some foreigners, diplomats, were telling me that never before have they felt so safe in any cities in the world. So that's the background. But I think that the Xi Jinping speech is not just about Hong Kong or Taiwan, even though that's part of the need to safeguard national security and territorial integrity. The whole thrust of his speech is to take China to a higher plane, to embrace the China dream, making China in two stages. The first stage is from now to 2035, making China into a reasonably advanced socialist country by the year 2035. And then the next stage by 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of People's Republic of China, making China into a wealthy and strong nation, and more democratic country, and more civilized country, a more harmonious country, and a more beautiful country in terms of ecological advancements. So I think that this is a huge task, and he admitted in his speech, which I listened to most of it.
Right.
And there are loads of challenges, and that's why there is a consensus within the Communist Party that Xi is the man to take on this task with a third term.
Right. Now, apart from Hong Kong, the Chinese president also said that they will never commit abandoning the use of force over Taiwan. But the US President Joe Biden recently said that if Taiwan is invaded militarily by China, then the United States will get involved. Do you think Xi Jinping would want to risk a direct confrontation with the United States by trying to invade Taiwan as he seeks a third term?
Well, President Biden and also in the recent release of the national security paper in the White House, only coming out only a couple of days ago, reaffirmed the United States' adherence to the One China policy. But that's the rhetoric. In the eyes of Beijing, the United States has been trying to hollow out the One China concept by creating more and more diplomatic space for Taiwan, as if Taiwan was a separate country, and by arming Taiwan to the teeth and turning Taiwan into a military porcupine, as it were. However, most of the Taiwanese people naturally do not want unification, but neither do they want full declared independence, because they fear that that will trigger Armageddon over Taiwan. So they just want to prolong the status quo. But however, while the United States continues to hollow out the China policy, time is not on the side of Taiwan, because President Xi already declared that the latest for that to happen, unification, is 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of People's Republic of China. And of course, he wouldn't rule out the use of force. But then after the Pelosi visit, Beijing published another white paper, the third of its kind on Taiwan, reaffirming the preference for peaceful unifications, i.e. Using all these dynamics to trigger a momentum towards negotiations. In other words, trying to put pressure on Taiwan to come to the negotiation table.
Right, Andrew, I'm afraid we will have to intervene right now. Thank you for getting us up to speed on that. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.